Death and rebirth. I wore white to my brother's funeral, while everyone else wore black. It was only me and his best friend Roy wearing white, as we were the closest to him. I did not know Roy that well, except that he had been my brother's best friend for over 5 years. I was always too young to play with them, even though I was only 2 years younger. But my relationship with my brother got better when he went off to college, where we would speak every day. When Roy came out as gay, my parents thought that he was dating my brother for the longest time, but that was not the case. They proved that a straight guy and a gay guy could just be friends. Roy was with him on the night that a drunk driver ended Dean, and he heard his last words, "Wear white to my funeral." Dean was always interested in the different things, something none of us except Roy understood. When I saw Roy wearing white, I asked him why, and he told me that it was my brother's last wish. He said that in death there is rebirth, he said. Like he will come back again? I asked. Of course, no one is ever truly gone. I know this is hard for you, but he loved you. Roy brought me in for a hug. Roy was my rock when my parents were so focused on avenging my brother's death. The case would drag on for months after we buried Dean, but all I wanted was to be surrounded by things that belonged to him, and the people he loved. My mother pulled me aside after they had lowered Dean. "Why are you wearing white? Why are you always so disrespectful?" she hissed. She was a lot more angsty and upset than usual. She never yelled at me. "It is what he wanted," I said defiantly. She just sighed and walked away from me and leaned against my dad, who had a stoic expression on his face. I was gutted. He was only 20 years old and now his flame had dimmed. "Do not frown. He would not want you to celebrate his life," Roy said, hand on my shoulder. I smiled up at him. He was the only person making this remotely bearable. Every day, he came over to the house and made sure that we were okay. He would bring us food, or warmed up the food that people visiting the house had given us, and make sure that I would get out of bed. After the funeral, we had an after tears at my house. This was where people would talk about him, have food, and I did not even care what else, because the sight of other people drained me. Most of them did not know him. Those high school guys, they had made fun of his nerdiness, and the other girl had stood him up for prom, yet he still found a way to be positive. As I was walking up the stairs, I felt a hand intertwine with mine, and when I looked, there was Roy. "Come, I have something to show you." He held up a key. I followed him to Dean's room, which had not been entered in months. He made his way over to his desk, fiddled with a few things, then music flooded the room. I closed the door behind me and went to lie on the bed. For hours, we listened to music and shared each other's memories of Dean. We laughed, cried, and debated over our memories of certain things, and I could not help feeling that through him I could see and speak to Dean again. This one time, he made us dye our hair matching rainbows, Roy said. "Matching rainbows? Why?" I asked. "To piss off this other guy in class who had said some mean stuff to me because I am gay, and because it was Pride Month," he said. "Wow, please tell me more about what you got up to," I laughed. "There was this one time we got chased by a horse, and it went on into the night. I felt so much better after having spoken to him. The darkness and the brokenness of my heart seemed to have eased up. I did not know when, but I fell asleep and I woke up in his arms. I felt a bit strange about that and slowly detangled myself from him. Then I crept downstairs and saw that there was no one else in the house. I made myself a cup of coffee and opened the mail. There, in scarlet font, was a letter from his university. I had applied because I wanted to go, but now I had no idea if I really wanted to. "You're up early," Roy suddenly said. "I have a letter from the university," I said. He raised his eyebrow and took it from me. I watched with bated breath as he scanned the contents of the letter, with a natural expression on his face. Then he enfolded me into his warm arms, screaming. "Wait, did I get in?" I asked, sensing that my ribs would break at any given time. "Of course you did," he chuckled. "At least there was something good that had happened to me that week." I could have sworn that I felt my brother's presence when I read for myself that I was going to study there in a few months. A few months later, I had just settled into my room and Roy was begging me to go to a party with him. "I get bored at parties," I laughed. "I want you to have the perfect college experience," he ruffled my hair. Even when we returned to university, he had remained in contact with me, and we were inseparable. Whenever I had a bad day, I would come to him. He made me feel like everything would be alright. "I can go another time," I said. "You might meet a nice college girl," he wiggled his eyebrows. That made me even less thrilled. For For the life of me, I tried to like girls, but I could never tolerate anything more than a friendship. I was still figuring it out as well. I mean, I felt more for him than any girl, but in a friendly way, not in a romantic sense at all. Evan, you're being such a big baby. Fine, I will leave, he sighed. No, please don't leave me alone, I pouted. So are we going to remain cooped up in here? He asked. Okay, let's go to the party, but only for a few minutes, I said. I mean, I was excited about college, but very shy as well. I ended up enjoying the party. It was just young people dancing to music and blindly swinging drinks, seeming to have no care in the world. I had beer in my hand, which was still half full, and I could not find Roy. I kept on texting and calling him, but his phone was going to voicemail. I opened one of the doors and saw a hunched-over figure. I was about to leave when I noticed that it was him. I closed the door behind me and called out to him. He looked at me, but his eyes looked a bit red. Hey, are you okay? I asked. It is my first party without Dean. I just needed a moment, he smiled shyly. I understand that it is difficult, but as you said, he lives in our memories, I said, bringing him closer to me. My heart tugged as I wanted to ease all the sadness that he felt. Thank you. You have been my rock, he looked at me. Then, before I could stop myself, we looked at each other, and a moment passed. At that moment, all I could think was that I wanted to come closer to him. I leaned in and kissed him. The noise around us faded until it was just us. I have been kissed by girls in the past, but never had I felt so much chemistry with any girl. I pulled him closer to him and deepened the kiss. Then a loud noise outside broke the moment, and we broke away. And what I had just done came flooding back to me, and I got up and flew out of the room before he could say anything to me. I was overwhelmed, as the moment kept on replaying in my head like a clip. I went to my room and tried to stop my heart from hammering in my chest. I could still feel his lips on mine. That shock was so scary, yet oddly pleasurable. I was confused as to what it was and why he had made me feel like that. I mean, I was straight, right? I dated girls. I just had not found the right one yet. I was too restless to get some sleep, so I fetched my bottle of water from my nightstand and decided to go on a walk. It was barely even classes, and I was already feeling overwhelmed. Everything was just moving too fast, and I needed it to stop. Normally, I would have asked Roy for advice, but the problem was Roy was the one that I had kissed. And as if the universe was not finished with me, I ran into him the very next morning. Before he could even greet me, I ran away from him. It became a game of hide and seek, which was easier because we did not share many classes. For over 2 weeks, I ran every time I saw him, and I did not respond to his texts. Then he sent me a text one night. Roy, Evan, we need to talk about what happened. Me, sure, just really swamped with coursework. Roy, okay, just wanted to say that it does not have to be awkward between us. I know you're straight and did not mean it. I did not know if what he was saying was the truth or not. Me, thanks for understanding. Sorry for acting weird. I was very confused, but that did not mean that I did not want to remain friends with him. We forgot about the kiss, but every time I saw him, I could not stop looking at him. Even months later, after the kiss, his simple touch would make me feel a certain way. I did not trust anyone but him to talk about my sudden interest in him. So one night, I did what I usually did when I wanted advice. I spoke to Dean. I took out his picture and started to tell him everything that was happening and how confused I was. I know you must be thinking to yourself, my best friend? But I think I'm seriously falling for him. Remember how I told you about my first kiss when I was 12 and how I regretted it? With him? It felt like a proper first kiss. You would think I am being ridiculous when I say that it felt fireworks. I imagined what he would say to me, and as if in my head I heard his voice. I was sure that I imagined it. Please be happy. I ran to the window where the sound seemed to come from, only to see a white bird flying away. Maybe it was him, telling me to stop being so scared. One afternoon, I was in his room as we ate snacks and played a video game. I swear I'm going to decimate you, he laughed evilly. I found myself laughing and fumbling with the control. Look what you made me do now. Now I'm losing, I chastised him. But he only chuckled. I reached out for his controller and we started to wrestle. We fell onto the floor, but I was so determined to get his controller. I could not stop laughing anymore, giving him the advantage. He was now straddled on my abdomen, holding my controller over my head. I became aware of how close he was, and I swallowed. My gaze landed on his lips, and that night flashed through my mind. when he leaned down and kissed me again. I did not stop him. The feel of his body on mine made me break out into waves of desire. I flipped him over and continued kissing him until I had to pull away because I could not even breathe anymore. We just stared at each other before he made a sound. I raised an eyebrow and he gestured to my legs around his waist. "Oh, sorry, I forgot I was on top of you," I chuckled and got off of him. He just stared at me with an unreadable expression on his face and got up. We kissed again," I started. "Are you going to run away again?" He looked down. I never thought for a moment that he was hurt by my rejection months ago. He had come across as unbothered all along. "No," I responded. "Why?" I think I like you." I felt my cheeks heating up. "You like me? How?" he asked, fixing his gaze on me, offering me no easy escape. "I like you as more than a friend," I confessed. "I like you too." "Since when?" "Around the time we started speaking after Dean's funeral." So what now?" I asked. "It's up to you," he shrugged. "I like you, but this is all new to me, so can we take it slow?" "How did you know I was going to say that?" "I was once in your position when I came to terms with my sexuality," he said. "I never asked you about how you realized you were gay." "Well, fetch me those peanuts there, snuggle in, and let me tell you all," he said, with a flourish of his hand. He always had a flair for the dramatic, which was one of the things I liked about him. Having him by my side while I figured out everything was the biggest blessing ever. He was so supportive of me, made me laugh, and had me head over heels in months. His extroverted persona might have been different from my introverted one, but it worked just fine. And slowly, I became comfortable in being who I was. It became natural to walk holding his hand or display affection when we were in public. I guess I was lucky that I came out at my university because we did not get much hate. There was still people with conservative views, but it was not so easy for them to bully us because disciplinary action would be taken. The months passed and we took things at a steady pace, but soon I felt like it was time for me to take the most important step, to come out to my parents. I had barely spoken with them the whole year. Things were not the same after the loss of my brother. When it was holiday time, I went home with Roy. The first night, he was at his house with his parents, and I spent time with them. They were still very sad, but they tried. They were both back at work, and Mom was attending therapy several times a week. Dad did not believe in therapy, but he said that he had joined the gym. I told them all the college stories, and they were very entertained. And in return, they told me all that had gone on in this town since my departure. "Mom and Dad, can Roy come over for dinner tomorrow night?" I asked. "Of course. How's he doing?" "He was very helpful at the funeral." "He's doing well. I've been hanging out with him a lot," I said. "We would love to catch up with him," Dad said. So the next night, he came to my house for dinner. As time passed, I got more nervous. My parents had always been nice to him, but I did not know what they would think about us. I was not delusional. I knew that some parents who would seem like they were accepting of gay people could just change when it was their child. "So have you been dating anyone?" he asked. "Yes, Dad." "Who's the lucky girl?" my mom asked. Roy cleared his throat, and I knew that it was my cue to say something. "Mom, Dad, I'm gay. And Roy is my boyfriend," I said after pausing a long time. My dad suddenly started choking on his food, but he recovered soon enough. My mom was looking at me like I had just sprouted two heads. "Well, we did not expect that," my dad said. "But we suspected it. I told you he might be gay," my mom looked at my dad. "What? You two put a wager on my sexuality?" I shouted. Everyone at the table laughed, while my parents tried to explain themselves. "Well, we are your parents. We noticed these things," Dad said. "Well, you were wrong about Dean," I pointed out. "Terribly wrong." My mother turned red. They had given my brother and Roy condoms one day and told them to be safe, which had been a joke for years. "We were happy that you are with Roy. He's a good person," Mom said. "Thank you so much." Roy looked like he was about to cry. Later, after dinner, we went up to our room. Our parents exchanged a look. My mother was about to say something, but my dad looked at her and she shut up. "Do you think she was about to?" I asked. "I would bet my left arm," he smirked as we entered my room, and he pinned me against the door. "Maybe we do need them," I smirked as I leaned up and kissed him. For the first time in a year, my whole family was laughing and joking, and saying Dean's name did not hurt anymore. Maybe in death, there was rebirth after all. Hey, did you see that? I asked. It had gone by so fast, but I could have sworn that it was a white bird. I told him and he grew pale. A white bird's been following me for some time now. I think it's a dove, he said. When we lose the people we love, it does not always mean that they are truly gone. The end. Today's story was a bit sadder than the usual, but so beautiful in the end. Have you ever made a move on a friend, and how did they react? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.